Hello guys, good evening, welcome to today's Simracing stream. Guys, welcome to a special stream today because we're not on Le Mans Ultimate, but we are on Project Motor Racing. And guys, today is going to be probably a stream a lot of people would be particularly interested in because we're not just doing the odd we're doing a little bit of racing thing here. Today, we're going to go into setup building, setup development, setup discussion, clicky boys that we explain, perhaps clicky boys that we do in order to improve the car. And well, we're gonna jump for that into a race weekend, not with the Peugeot, but with the Valkyrie Aston Martin Hypercar, and we're going to do that at Northhampton, aka Silverstone. And we're gonna do that all alone. We have a 2-hour session coming your way. And Elmo has provided himself with coffee, which is great to see. All right. I would say we're gonna jump straight into the session. I hope that this view is going to be just fine. Actually, let me have a look on how this would look in terms of building a setup. If I go into vehicle setup, is the numbers just fine enough? Let me see. Put it on project sync master. Yeah, the numbers are good enough to read, right? So we just take this. Okay, perfect. Right. So we're gonna get going, and we are going with, well, the hypercar, the Aston Martin, and of course we're also going to go from the basic setup that we are using it, and this is version 2.0 of Project Motor Racing. So we're gonna find out how does the hypercar feel, we're gonna find out how does it work, we're gonna find out how does it perform, and then we take it from there. Is the audio fine for you guys to listen at? That would be particularly interesting for me to know. If you guys have a solid audio. Now we can take care of that for a moment now, because we need at least roughly 2 laps in order to get these tires up to temperature. Thank you, Elmo. Much appreciated. Some SimHub stuff. Here's some testing also SimHub and how it works with the lovely dashboard and stuff. I'm currently doing a bit of R&D, so to say. Viva Lork. Sound is okay to you, so you guys hear the engine sound loud enough and hear me clear enough. That's good then. Alright. So first things first, as we are out with the Aston Martin warming up, how does the car feel? How does the car generally drive? We are building 3 setups today that are going to be downloadable from the download center within the game at some point. Obviously when I have them finished and so on, they will be implemented. And you know, sometimes you'd be like, how did this setup get developed in the first place? Like, I know that there is always personal liking and disliking when it comes down to setup. It's also, you know, the way how you are building a setup philosophy-wise. That might not suit everyone, but just so you are getting an idea, That we're not just like sitting there and being like, oh, let's put a little bit of dampers, let's put a little bit of suspension left, right and center, and then just, you know, go for it. That is not the case. This is not how I am doing a setup working job in the first place. So, high speed understeer is the first thing that strikes me when being out on this car. So that is something we need to work around. As I said, we're going to build 3 setups, a mid-downforce level, a high-downforce level, and a low-downforce level. And you'll see that each of them is taking significant chances, taking significant challenges as well. As in, this is how these cars are working. We're all going to build them at Silverstone, and I'll tell you the reason why. Silverstone has both low speed turns like turn 3 and 4 on the GP circuit, high speed turns like Maggots, Backett's, Chapel, Stowe, Pops Corner, and medium speed corners like Woodcote and Club. So whatever areas of corner you wanna see balance for, this is a perfect racetrack to do basic setup work on. Such would be Barcelona. Barcelona features the very same thing. Alright, so we're gonna put 1 lap time, maybe 2 lap times for reference. Well, the car seems to come a little bit more alive. And in case this goes really well, we just go on to another car. Usually it takes me up to 2 hours to do the job, to build all 3 setups. Let's see how the Aston feels in the first place. This still feels a bit understeer. An important indication for me will be tire temperature distribution across the car. Right hand side tire is going to be always a bit colder, obviously, but to me the important part is how does the front left look compared to the rear left. Currently both is very balanced, so that is an indication that the car in general is having a generally neutral balance. A bit of oversteer moment here. It feels to me as rather an on-throttle understeer issue rather than a general understeer issue. Here the car rotates fine until you go to power. And it's not just perfectly fine, but and then maybe also let's talk about the target of these setups. These setups shall not give you an OP car out of the box, as we put a 49.2. It shall give you a car that is generally balanced, driving well. And that for all downforce levels, obviously. Shall not give you an e-sport type of setup where you go hyper quick with, especially since setup philosophy is very much different from person to person, from driver to driver. Some people rather like understeery cars, some other people like oversteery cars, some want to have them balanced neutrally, and to me it's going to be the target to set these cars up in a rather neutral balance, that it shall be alright for everyone in the first place, and then if you dislike the balance for whatever reason, I think it shall be your task to have a look on them and tune them to your way. But basically, whenever there is a new player, they shall just have a good idea or a good feeling when going out of the pits with this car. And as you can see, we need a little bit of fixing on balance from this setup. Generally speaking, the car feels already quite balanced in the first place. Yeah, we do have understeering moments, but also some oversteering moments, and sometimes it's not just that easy. 47.8. Yeah, see here, this is the understeer part in the high speed. So let's try to fix that a little bit. And that means we're going to return the car to the pits. Firstly, I had a little bit of snappiness going into the turns. Oops, wrong button. So what I do in the first place, on the engine and drivetrain, I put the brake bias a bit more centered, maybe it's 57.5. Because that will give me a little bit more neutral car going into the trail braking zones. However, understeer, especially in high-speed turn, understeer that we're suffering from could potentially be fixed with a little bit more engine braking. Most of the understeer we're suffering from is when we were off the throttle in initial turning. Because as soon as we go on the throttle again, we're having that... well, we're lacking rotation in the first place, so I'm trying to put a little bit of engine braking. And that needs to be... is it negative? No, it needs to be positive. Engine braking, I'm gonna put that to 15%-ish, or like 0.15. And additionally, in order to keep the suspension going, is a tricky one. Like this, the rear is already a bit stiffer, but in order to get it a little bit more stiff, because we want it to rotate a lot better, I remove a little bit of toe in and put a bit of more negative toe in at the front. And additionally, I'm gonna adjust the right side and the back just by 2 clicks. That should give me a little bit more rake and should give me a little bit more performance in the high speed areas. On top of that, there's something in the drivetrain still. Power diff is already quite open. Could open the coast ramp angle, but at the same time, I need that differential to be rather locked for the low speed. It's a very interesting dilemma I'm kind of fighting here, because the low speed rotation tends to be a little bit over rotating, whereas the high speed rotation is too little. Now, if I want to really fix the high speed rotation and the high speed understeer, I'll certainly gonna spin in low speed, which obviously fails the objective of building a standard setup, right? Okay, so additionally we saw the front left tire being a little hotter than the rear. So I'm gonna put 1 click more pressure, as that brings the temperature a little bit down. Might as well also take away a little grip. And then I need to go and feel from the steering wheel whether we might actually be bottoming out on the track. And if we do so, we need to further adjust ARBs. But let's see about that in a moment. Oh, that's the engine brake. Oh, that's crazy. Ah, this is going to need a button record, I'm afraid. Interesting. Okay, we need to remove that engine brake. That engine brake is causing a big drama here. Do I see that even on the ECU status? I think it pretty much feels like the game is attaching some brakes. Because like I'm flat out and I have no power. You see that? I was reaching 290 at the end of Hanger Straight last time. No chance. 250. And you see there is a good amount of friction on the drivetrain. Well, let's remove that engine brake. I'm pretty sure this is not intended to work like that. We are taking some notes. And in order to, this is what I think it's doing on the Aston Martin Valkyrie particular, because it didn't do that on other cars yet. But if I put the engine brake to 100, I think the car won't move out of the pits. Well, it just does, but you see how much? Ah, that's fucked. Let's see if we can get to a RPM range where the power goes up. That's the clutch. Obviously, while I'm on power, the engine brake doesn't get triggered. Okay. I think that is proving the point, right? Something we need to look at fixing. Yeah, it looks like it's adding a passive brake indeed. Let's just put it to 0. Well, Storm Apex, because there is a continuous development going on in these cars, so we need to also redevelop our setups from time to time. Right, let's go out. We wanted to check about the grounding. Abby Santima with the follow. Thank you so much. Ferox esports driver. Welcome to the alternative Simracing game. Alright. in order to check if we are potentially grounding, they're gonna weave a lot to see how the FFB is responding to the car. But of course, we firstly need to put in higher temperatures. Firstly, for the rubber to grip up. Secondly, higher temperature will also inflate the tire with more pressure. As you can see, we're right now at 1.58 bar. That will rise up to probably 1.8 or so. And that is then the more dynamic or the more accurate right height on the front for me personally. Because it gives me more of a, or it puts the car more into a window where it's actually performing on the longer period. As in, you know, takes you 2 or 3 laps to get tires into temperature, and then they, if you drive well, stay there till the rest of the stint. And you can already see just from the camera that there is a pretty much roll within the car. So I would say I'm not necessarily grounding on the front nor the rear. Yep, it's PMR. Theo. Sorry, not Theo. For Eric, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the stream. So let's see general behavior with the new differential settings and brake biases and brakes. Whether we have improved that aero balance a little better. Yeah, these tires are certainly not there yet. We'll take a timed lap for it. How does it drive now? It is significantly improved from its original drop. Especially the hypercars, they do now have a, what I call a modern gearbox. I felt like the hypercars before and had some kind of old-fashioned gearbox where it was like you come up at the top and then you go, and same on the downshift. There was like a significant time where the car or the transmission has been in neutral. That has now been fixed, as you can see. Accurate quick shifts on the gearbox. Not that much shocks anymore to the transmission. I think the force feedback is a little bit more refined, so we don't have this jolting anymore that we had in version 1.0. And then generally, I think they are starting to understand their physics engine a lot better. I have to admit that the physics engine is probably extremely strong. It feels very dynamic, very much possibilities with it. There's a lot of simulation, it feels like tires are getting good up to a certain point and then they start overheating. And the moment they start overheating, they not only turn red down there, they also inflate the tire, they're gonna overuse the tire, they increase the tire wear. But most importantly, the biggest thing I've seen is when you put extremely flat tires, it's almost like RF2 and Le Mans Ultimate, you have so insanely high amounts of grip in lateral forces. The problem is that the tires are just so flat that you lose 40 to 50 kph on the main straights. It's crazy. And then if you do the opposite, if you inflate them too much, they won't go up as much in heat, but boy oh boy, they feel like driving slicks in wet tire conditions, even on like a dry track. So they become very much too hard, which in hindsight means you need to find a very good balance or a very good setting on tire pressures to align with what your suspension is doing. If you put the tires a little stiffer in terms of like having more pressure in it, you can maybe soften the suspension a little more, or you do it the other way around. So I think it increases amount of philosophy that you can build a setup around, such as, you know, in Le Mans Ultimate we use high downforce, high rake on the Ferrari, let's say. You could put that kind of philosophy here on the hypercars as well, but you can, on top of that, put different philosophies in how you are creating a suspension stiffness or a suspension softness around it. You see curb surfaces being simulated a lot more. I'm not quite sure if I'm maybe grounding in the high-speed areas when touching these curbs, and then like the car kind of spins to the inside, which gives me a little bit of the feeling that on the front corner area I'm grounding, and therefore like spinning to the inside, because there a huge friction is created that the rear simply doesn't follow. And that makes me think I should potentially put the ARB a click harder and maybe the front right tire a little higher. Still not happy with that understeer in the car. Although I have the feeling that generally it is a bit improved. This is what I mean, like, perhaps we need just a little bit more right height and a little bit more roll resistance for the car not to scratch as much on the ground. It could be in this corner that the front left corner spring is already like fully compressed and scratching on the ground. Does flicking still work? You mean the R Factor 2 drift slide style that we saw on Le Mans Ultimate for quite some while as well? I don't necessarily think so, but I don't know. I mean, see. That was maybe too much of a flick. I do remember what we did have on PMR on release is whenever you were in a slide, in a drift, you just applied throttle and the car just like fixed itself and pulled out of the corner normally. But don't think that this is the case anymore. Now we were in a flick. It turns into too much understeer. Arguably, I'd still say that the rear tires got a little bit too much lateral performance, I would say. I mean, if one start corner entry, just going into the turn and like throwing it around. I don't know. I think it's that the rear is a lot more dangerous. Like when you go in over a certain point, you're just gonna lose it. Anyway, let's try to go for lap time, see what the balance is looking like right now. Nope. Okay. I need to fix this further. Close a bit more on the diff. Let's try to do it with the suspension. So I do think I'm grounding a bit on the front. So I'm raising the front by 2 clicks, and analogically to that, raise the rear by 2 clicks in order to like stay within the same rake. Courtney McGregory, The FFB is pretty... It is pretty talkative. It is improved. There is this jolting doesn't exist anymore. And what is particularly interesting about the PMR approach is you can set up your force feedback and steering according to your own preferences. With the latest patch, I would suggest putting the steering stiffness not higher than 1. Because I think this pretty much goes into clipping fairly soon. And then you have all sorts of force feedback parameters that you can set up for the car. So that is, I think, that is an interesting thing, especially since you set it up per car and don't have a global setup of force feedback, which to me makes sense because you have all sorts of car classes: historic, modern, GT, prototypes, Mazda MX-5, Porsche Cup car. So I think it makes sense to divert on the force feedback per car, right? Then on, well, back to my actual topic, rear stability in low speed turns. I put up the camber a little. I put the bump stop stiffness. I shouldn't hit that one. Especially not in low speed corners. But for the high speed, the bump stop length could be a thing that causes the understeer. So I'm putting that up a little. And I'll go another click with the front anti-roll bar in order to really make sure that the front is not grounding into the turns. On the preload, I'm trying to stiffen that a tiny little bit. And I also generally improve the number of clutches a little bit because, effectively that should give me a tiny little bit more locked differential, and that should boost the balance in low speed turns. And then you have to admit as well that the car's characteristics across the hypercars are just a little different. I think the Alpine has an insanely great rotation in high speeds. Like you turn in with the car, and if you just get it right, it's like it is super lightning quick in high speed areas. However, that car is nearly undrivable in the low speed area, so you really need to build a setup for the low speed behavior, and that means compromising its high speed performance, or on the other hand, you still benefit from its high speed performance because despite you've put the setup pretty understeering, the high speed performance is still looking good. Right, so we're now hitting those curbs still. And as much as we still hit them and go strongly over it, might as well just rephrase my sentence. But I wanted to say, like, it doesn't feel like touching out that crazy anymore. Therefore, not over-rotate on the curb and so on. Balance improvement. The only thing why this happened now is tires are still at 1.7 bar and pressure, and will rise to 1.8. That will rise the right tire a little bit more, and then dynamically that will become better. But let's see how the car deals with those changes in the first place. Necrodox, hello there. Track limits. Understeer. I don't wanna do a suggestion too early, so I'll take my time heating these tires up for another lap. M Swatty, thank you very much for your follow as well. Haven't seen that. We just got this game in the raffle today. I can't wait to see how it drives. Very nice, congratulations. I will tell you something about that game. When you go driving it, choose the LMP2 Audi, the R800 or R900 LMP2 Audi prototype. It's a bit of a historic prototype in the first place, but that car is just so nice to drive. To me, it really creates good fun. Now that feels better, doesn't it? It might still be a tad on the understeery side, but generally speaking, we're looking way improved with that, I think. Yeah, give them a shot. They'll be good fun. So we're now 14th down to our actual PB, and I think whether this car is improved, especially in the high speed, we're gonna see in the next couple of turns. So we're 3/10 down. I ran a bit wide, that's a bit shit. Now we're 7/10 down. Let's see Maggots back at Chapel. Does the car do what I wanted to do? Having also a bit of an issue holding that line, and I would say no. Understeer got worse. Yep, we're on PMR today. Because we're building default setups. Last sector is a bit faster. Let's see, go for another push. Starting in the last sector. Well, hypercars are under constant development, which is also the reason why I'm back in going into setup productions, right? Because I think it might be the case that the hypercars are maybe a little bit subpar when it comes to the quality compared to the GTs, GT3s and historic cars. But I don't think that they are trash per se. So, Cops Corner, I'm understeering a lot. See Maggots back at Chapel. Balance is okay-ish at best. Someone's seen my straight line speed by chance this lap? But it is a 47.3. Okay. So, not set up. 30 bits. We need to come back a little on the front end. So this could also be triggered by the diff. But remember, we needed that diff for the low speed turns in order to make the car, to improve the car's drivability, and I think we achieved that. So I don't want to adjust the diff, because the diff will only generate things on the rear. So we keep the diff where it is. In hindsight for that though, instead of doing things on the rear, we're gonna go back with the anti-roll bar on the front. Gonna increase the rake a tad. And I'm gonna put the bump stop rate a click softer, just in case we're hitting that. As well as the slow bump and the slow rebound. I just want the front end to be a lot more alive, so to say. And then I could reduce the tire pressure to give the front end a bit more bite. But that will drive up the temperature. Let's leave it like that for the moment. And see whether we can go faster than Mackets back at the check. That's the only objective now. And if we don't go any faster, then that's fine. Then we also just need to accept that the car is not perfectly fine for high-speed turns, but it drives generally well in all areas. Right, which is the purpose of a mid-downforce level setup. After the mid-downforce, we're going to build a low-downforce, so we probably see a little bit of a dip in lap times. Anyway, and also an interesting change in balance, I would assume, because those cars, they rely heavily on the aero in the back, so that's going to be an interesting development for sure. If you appreciate the stream though, if you appreciate the technical insights, then please have a follow on Twitch, subscribers on the YouTube channel, and maybe we're gonna do this again this week. For a different type of car. The front feels on the steering yet when you push the rear. It went sideways straight away. So certainly what I said before to Eddie Santina, if he's still watching, can't just like be in a slide and push the throttle and the car just kind of aligns itself again. It just doesn't work anymore. So this is the first lap. We need at least 2 warm-up laps. By the way, don't be intimidated by the HUD. I have rearranged it for my liking as I need it right now to set up building. I couldn't care less about the flag indicator or the track limits indicator flashing somewhere on my steering wheel and area. No, Gaga, this is Pre-Check Motor Racing. Brake bias is fine. Gives you room to navigate still. Oh, tire temperatures are far from being that far up. In the last configuration, I already feel there is more front end now again in Maggots Back Chapel. But potentially we could see a little bit of a lap time bonus. I mean, obviously I want to push these cars as well to see what they can do in a sort of BOP comparison. Obviously, in order to do a BOP, you would need to run all the cars on 3 or 4 different tracks to like see a bigger picture, because you can't just adjust the BOP based on one track alone. But it still gives a good indication. That turn 1 felt significantly better than before. Cars also well balanced in low speed area. Don't have too much trouble navigating it around. Good front bite, good rear stability. Yeah, game performance on hardware is a little... That is a little topic, I assume. I'm running medium-ish graphic settings and I'm getting 95 FPS right now. Oh, let's see, Cops Corner. Okay, like before I lost 3 or 4 tenths, now it's only 3.5. I get the corner correctly. Let's see, Maggots Chapel. Oh, I missed Beckett's in that. Equal time. So yeah, I think this is what we want to look forwards to, right? And right inside temperatures, yeah. I don't feel any grounding with that yet. So it was free performance improvements, softening the fronts, ARB again. My hardware specs is an i9 12900K and a 3080 RTX. Let's go. There's a mistake going over the anti-cuts there. Thankfully, the airflow didn't get interrupted, so the car just aligned itself nicely again on the road. We're 10th up. I rather stay anonymous. I mean, I've said this before. I think that the physics engine they do have for PMR is very much capable of a lot of things. It's probably mostly a matter of how you adjust all the parameters of the car, which I think, as we speak, the guys are developing that further and further, using more and more feedback and more knowledge and experience to get these cars into the right conditions. But physics-wise, I think it's a very interesting title. Spoke about that before, that pressure, tire pressure is affecting both temperature and grip, and also right tire. So you have to think around your car setup, not only by adjusting the springs, but also having the right amount of tire pressures, right amount of inflation on the tire in order to have good tire temperature, and also a good rigidity of the tire. Too little pressure in the tire and you heat up and overheat insanely, giving you awesome grip on cold tires, but as soon as the tire just overheats and is underinflated, you keep losing time in the straights. I missed the entry point, just about keeping the car on the road though. I think you have to just deal with a little bit of understeer in the high speed area. As I've said before, if I don't have the understeer in the high speed area and just get a neutral car there, I'm gonna have issues with the rear in low to medium speed corners. And as you can see, it's not like the rear is planted and completely on rails. It still has its moments, but they are manageable. You don't see me like ruthering for every low speed turn and be like, oh my god, I almost can't drive the car. And if you underdrive the entry, you can push on the exit, and then you don't lose a full 3/10. Well, this is just about 3 now. So that gets back at some chapel. A bit too quick in that second part. Yeah, that F's up the heading. So we're now a 10th further ahead though, so that is an improvement in the setup still. Probably I could go a little bit more towards that, but again, this is not about building an esport type of setup. This is about building a baseline setup that the average player just can slap on the car and enjoy the driving. Yeah, you have to deal with a little bit of understeer and high speed, but generally speaking, you get a generally fine balanced car for that. Cannot do a good lap though. Once again, too much over that curb. Last laps I just missed it. Lock up and spin. Okay. Means I can't. But that is fine for me as a car in medium downforce. So we save the setup. I'll pull another coffee real quick. And then we go into low speed setup and low downforce setup and high downforce setup. So, guys, we'll be right back. Alright, here we are back in business. Guys, thank you so much for still being with me. I rather stay anonymous. Are you still with us? Because then I happily answer your question about that one. Okay, so we said this is our MDF. Now let's go to the LDF, the low downforce. And as I've said before, the cars are extremely dependent on the rear wing and on the rear aero performance. So I'm not even going to go minimum wing unless we're going Daytona or we're going probably not even Monza, because you need that stability for some corners there still. We're gonna keep the rear wing angle at 2.0. Rear wing is adjustable from I think 0.5 to 10.0. So we're still on the pretty low end. However, in order to counter that, what we need to do is also put a pretty low, well, not just low rake, actually almost negative rake. You see the right height here. So I'm adjusting that rear a lot. Front's coming a bit up. And I think like that we should get roughly an okay-ish balance. Remember, as I would like to say hello and welcome, thank you for joining, Iron. You cannot just, put on off the rear wing and be like, yeah, the car's going to be fine because we still got rake and whatever. As you are putting the rear wing down, also the liability of the car to rely on mechanical grip increases in low speed turns. And that is extra potentially because the airflow, obviously, you go 50 kph, you have airflow downforce X. If you go 100 kph, you have it X to the square. So that goes exponentially up. And as much as the rear wing effect is already pretty little, under 100 kph, it is still significant enough in order to keep the car in check. So we're gonna keep it like this for the moment. Go out and see how the car feels in a low speed area, right? That's how we're going to do it today. For those of you watching, is PMR an interesting title for you in the first place? Like, let's say on the one hand looking at the stream, on the other hand like driving yourself, or what is your opinion on it? I forgot my agua. Tell you, like, the tires are still cold, yet the car rotates. I'm pretty sure I have to further reduce the rotation. If nothing else, it's interesting because of the drama. What kind of drama? Yeah, that low wing is already paying its dividends. Well, let me know about all the issues that you know. Hammer on the hello there. It drives alright, I have to say.
Okay, mate, let's go for some fast laps now. Tires and brakes are in the window.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the brakes or the tires are still in the window. That is the low rear wing. So as I've mentioned before, car's performance aerodynamically very sensitive on the rear wing. It would be funny if that car would actually go quicker in low downforce configuration, but I doubt it. I think I'm gonna lose a significant amount of time in low speed and an even more significant amount of time in high speed. Despite balance might be better, especially in high speed. But remember, this is lap 1, this is not representative on the tire temperatures yet. This Silverstone looks like it's out of Final Fantasy or something. Why do you think so? I think it looks pretty accurate. Like, you even have the modern watches here on the left. Yeah, that could be because I think I have a lot of blurriness and unsharp edges for the camera caption. I think generally speaking the track looks alright. Now look at this. We're even going quicker lap 1 and turn 1 and 2. Because the car is a lot less understeery in high speed now. Which will be an even more fun situation when we come into the high speed. To the high downforce setup. That might make the car just simply understeering like crazy. I'm not too unhappy with the rake, but I do think it needs to be lowered a little further. Like, yeah, of course we're getting purple right now, but I think the car's pretty much on the edge of losing it in the back. This corner simply... The car doesn't like cops. Simple as that. This is what I mean. It's like, it's rotating great, but it's a bit over-rotating. Like, every time I'm a bit sideways here. So, whilst this might be very fast, if you drive it on point, for the average player, and I don't want to offend anyone by that, for the average player, I think this is a bit too much, isn't it? Yeah, you also see the balance issue at the tire temperatures. Beforehand, the front tire has been 2 or 3 degrees hotter than the rear. Now we're talking about front tire is rear tire temperature. Sometimes even the rear has higher temperature, just like right now. Means that the car is relying a lot more on that rear lift. So yeah, as much as I appreciate the more neutral balance in the high speed area, I need to fix it. This is not great enough. We can also go click down with the spring rate. That way we don't need to adjust too much on the rake. We're still positive on the rake. Camber is a bit too much now, I think. This is a bit, you know, the car is like, it needs too much roll in order for the rear to grip really good. Everything else I think is just fine. Maybe to keep that temperature a little lower, we put the tire pressure up a little. Just a click. And then I want the rebound to be stiffer and the slow bump, both a bit softer and the front a bit stiffer. So that should help a little with the overall balance. Let's check. I've driven the Mazda MX-5 lately, and that was hell of a fun car. Well, let's see. Cold tires. Yeah. More understeer spec. Edward Tibble, thank you so much for your sub on the YouTube channel. Welcome to the stream. Oh. Unlucky. So certainly it's not like you be in a spin, apply power and you'll be fine, right? So the car's a lot more understeery again. More neutral in the low speed turns. Maybe actually a little bit too neutral. No one said you're always gonna hit the nail with the head on the setup in the first clicks. Sometimes you have to go a little bit into the other direction to find the right compromise. Small lift was on the steering off there. Damn tire is not in the window yet. I'm kind of looking forwards building the high downforce setup. I think this Aston could be a stellar rocket ship with that. Because that high downforce setup would potentially allow us to put a bit more aggressiveness on the front, like we had it before in this low downforce setup. Just obviously with a different style, with a lot of rake, a soft suspension at the front, and a rather stiff suspension at the rear. Because that massive rear wing is going to cause a big chunk of understeer, of course. So we need to overcome that. I need to even work further on it. Like, I already feel the car is pretty understeery in high and medium speed corners, also a little bit understeery in low speed. Maybe I've just overdriven it. Missed that apex sadly. Bit of a yield on the rear. Well, we're only 1/10 down, and obviously we're gonna gain big chunk of time over the straights. Lower rear wing, higher top speed, obviously. That low speed turning is still a bit on the edge. I think it's manageable. Oh, that was beautiful, huh? Only a half a tenth loss. As I've mentioned before... Okay, this is still too aggressive. Still too aggressive. And this is a bit of a pain with those low downforce setups. They make the car extremely hard to set up actually. Yeah, in that area I'd even probably stiffen the differential a bit further. Kind of have to. We put a slow bump. The weight stays a bit more in line. And I click more toe in again. You have to deal also with the low downforce setup being a bit sketchy in the back. There is no other way around it. These cars are way too dependent on the rear wing, because the first challenge out of such a session is building the MDF. The MDF needs to be like the most balanced and the setup with the most compromises, like being sharp in the turns, being sort of okayish quick in the straights, but also just being stable enough. The low downforce setup, to an extent, you can't fix it all. You have to deal with the rear being a bit loose, because if you don't want to have the rear that loose, just simply add a rear wing. But obviously, from a certain point onwards, it's no longer a low downforce setup then, right? The LDF I could also think about putting TC5. How do you guys like the rear view camera from the top of the car, seeing the rear wing? I think that's kind of unique. Yeah, so now I fixed the rear. Well, I did not even fix the rear really. I think the rear has only hardly improved. The only thing that really improved is car's willingness to rotate. But maybe I'm just judging too early, because tires again still cold. Especially right inside tires are very cold. Oh, that's fine. I think this setup could be the one to go with for the LDF. Because car feels responsive, it feels okay-ish balanced. Again, with a low rear wing, you have to deal with some turbulences and some balance issues, especially stability balance issues. But I think they are manageable if you drive in them in a way the car can deal with it, which is like not being as aggressive as I am right now. But obviously I have to also take those cars on the limit to see whether they actually can be pushed, or whether you can go on the edge with those. Too low on the brakes. So far, every car went quicker than the MDF when building the HDF. This could be the first car where the LDF is actually beating it out. I'm gonna bit too much on that curb. I think hitting that curb on the exit is shit. Ooh. Nice. Can you please cool down these tires a bit? I don't even know what happened there. For me, and you guys feel free to go back a little to enlighten me. But I think when I was going left and right from Maggots back at the chapel, the screen was a bit slow to me, as in I was suffering some input lag, I think. I'm not sure. However, I think it's a... It has a promising physics engine. I've spoken about that before. I don't think it is as well set up yet as LMU or something similar, but I think the guys have a physics engine that has a lot of potential, because there is things it does better than LMU, which is, man, I can't drive any corner with an Apex right now. This is crazy. Because I think on the tires, the physics engine is more sophisticated than LMU, with its always negative tire pressure thing. You know, the tire pressures in LMU is like minimum only, and that is like preset. That is absolute meta. And that kind of erases the tire being an actual part of the suspension, because the tires are always have to be used in a certain way. You know, always minimum pressure. And here in PMR that is different, so that's a benefit. There's other things though that are not as good, such as I think no flat spots in it. So there's things where the engine-wise still need improvement, but just seeing what they can do on the tire pressure side, you feel that there is in-depth, there is a physics engine behind it that has potential to simulate all that, and that I think is a great news for the sim racing community as such. That was a significant lift, sadly. Oh man. So what to do? Like, we're also getting to a point where you can't necessarily do much more to the rear in order to have it stable. You can go coast a click more. I can go spring rate a click softer. Here I probably have to think about the bump stop length and making that soft as well, because now we're getting really low on the rear. And anti-roll bar, one click down. Final clicks. Probably that kills it with a lap time performance again, but again we're aiming at the low downforce setup that it's drivable. Yeah, but that is down to these hypercars are being dependent on the rear wing. You'll see when I'm building the high downforce setup in a moment. The rear is almost unspinnable. It's like glued to the ground. But there we have the other issue, that with the rear being so stable, I mostly have a hard time finding a front to rotate. Well, I think where the physics engine is working particularly well is the historic cars, and I think to an extent this is what they've started with. I think they have first built historic cars. Look at the understeer. They first build the historic cars and then build the modern cars in it. Because as version 1.0 dropped, we had like a historic gearbox transmission on these hypercars, which drove me crazy to an extent. Yeah, honestly, I think with the setup adjustments I did now, I completely killed the front. But I may be wrong. Maybe suddenly I'm able to put the same lap times in. But I already feel the understeer is creeping in. Hey, Andreas. First lap already doesn't count, obviously, in terms of comparison. Tires are still coming to temperature. Sometimes I would just love to leave the pits with 90 degrees and proper inflated tires, just to don't have that process of like, you change something and you take 5 minutes to get the car into the operation window in the first place. And I'm putting the TC to 5. We probably just need it for the low downforce configuration. We've just lost 1/10, despite Maggot's Beckett's treble hasn't been that great. So maybe we've just moved into the right direction. Tires at least are now on the window. Since when am I sponsored by Falcon? Since November 25 when I joined their Simracing team. And then there's this happening. So what the fuck was that then? Sometimes, like, you saw when we went over the curbs and Maggot's, Beckett's and Chapel that the car didn't respond at all, it didn't do anything. And now we're hitting, after a pretty good turn 1 I have to say, we're hitting that curb in turn 2 and just die. I don't know. To an extent I agree. I do not know how it is in real life, how big is that friction in those drivetrains in the first place, but there is now an engine brake settings on these cars where you can adjust that friction. Hayden Westers, hello there, how you doing, man? Well, honestly, Boba Ganush, I think AMS2 is much worse than this. AMS2 is that endless drift slide thing going on whatever car until it's set, until it randomly you just die there. I just have to drive it like a low downforce setup. I think I'm expecting too much of it. Also expecting things that I cannot recreate with it. Control Garage, thank you very much for your sub. You're welcome. Easy fix. Suspension 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Ah, the other one, of course, wasn't taken. Right. One. I already did 1, 2, 3 in the back, right? Didn't I? Yeah. The car's sitting too low. Which makes sense because I softened the bump stops. So probably now it just drops through. So I'm putting the bump stops a click harder. What the fuck's happening with the car? It just keeps rising at the front. And at the rear. Eh? Now that is fancy. So it keeps starting doing the same or what? I need to dig a bit deeper into that. Yeah, I don't know. I've noticed it too. Whenever I was being coasting and turning, you're easily prone to spin, despite not even like here. That can easily result in a spin for whatever reason. Might be an engine braking issue. So let's bring this LDF to a finish, because I'm only having 20 minutes left and I need to do a high downforce package still. I mean, that is obviously the result of it, right? Now we've taken so much, and remember the Aston Martin is a car with a lot of Venturi channels down there underneath that bodywork. So I think we've just taken a lot of that performance away now. Would be so great if I just don't spin it on cold tires. I'm starting getting a bit tired actually. Which makes the driving quality I'm putting to the car suffering. Which is a bit bad because LDF needs the most driving quality. Yeah, we're on a good way though. Might be understeery, but stable. When tires are in the window, which they are about to be at the end of that lap. Yeah. We're almost there, guys. But here you see how edgy it is on the rear. Might as well just remove another click of suspension rigidity at the back. Yeah, well, on PMR, the car is getting constantly developed on a weekly basis as well. They might just not drop the updates every other week. But I'm pretty sure that the guys keep pushing for better cars and better physics on a daily basis. And all over the sudden you have a beautifully balanced low-downforce setup. It's just a bit too low. It's all about the feeling sometimes. Yeah, we have a little bit more understeer in the car. Especially off throttle. Too much oversteer on throttle. Gonna do another lap. Yeah, I agree. For the Aston Martin, that's wrong. It should be the front wing that shall be adjusted. It's true. Yeah, that was a driving error. Okay. Carriage goodie. We put suggested sloth bump rebound and I'd rather put the front a click harder. We save that setup. Alright, let's go focus on the high downforce setup, and for that reason I go load the MDF. And then slap on the maximum wing. Well, not maximum, but close to maximum. So 9.5. And we're putting the rear stiffer. And we're putting the rear a lot higher. And as we need at least 10 millimeters, 11 meters at the front, I'll keep quickly comment a screenshot because I'm curious about something. So let's see about this. We're having a pretty intense rake now. That's probably too intense. Let's put it to 20. But we're having like 20 millimeters, 30 millimeters of rake. And we're going to put... We leave the camber as it is right now. Let's see how the car handles actually. 25 minutes. Ah, Danda, that's... yeah. It takes effort. And sometimes it's hardly rewarding. As on that LDF, I kept kind of turning in circles. But I obviously want the player base to enjoy this, so I'm happy to contribute here. You feel the airflow making the car super lazy. I don't own Grand Prix Legends, so sadly can't comment on that one. Something is up with that car now. Feels almost like I have no power. But I do. You can see it on the output. Well then, that rear wing is so massive, and you guys see the difference between low downforce and high downforce, right? The understeer, despite I have almost put a zero rake to an almost maximum rake, is insane, isn't it? Anyway, let's see how the warmed up tires are. This car probably will not go faster in high downforce configuration because of the drag it creates. Let's see how much we lose on the straight. 5.5 tenths. Actually, we gain time. What the fuck? Now we're losing. Yeah, just add more rotation to it, and I said this before, you can probably build that setup very much aggressive now. That car on the back's just on rails now. I'm gonna put exactly that. More tightness to the rails, so suspension clicks at the back, one click at the back. And we are putting a bump stop rate softer. Oh, stiffer actually, it was already stiffest. Yeah. Maybe right height adjustment at the front down and right height at the back up. And then much more open diff. Because the car can allow it to rotate. And then we see how that goes. Done that Simracing, what makes me a bit suspicious about this one, and I hear your concern on it. By the looks of it, if you see the Aston Martin having a rear wing instead of a front wing, you quickly get the impression to be like they've just created whatever platform for an LMDH and slapped it on all the cars, right? But I don't think that is actually what has happened, because every car, no matter whether it's BMW, no matter whether it's being the Acura, or the Aston Martin, or the Peugeot, or the Alpine, all of them behave completely different than the drivetrain. The Peugeot, for instance, has absolutely no power whatsoever in low to mid RPM ranges. It feels like a GT4 in acceleration, but somehow the car produces lap time. Now this Aston Martin sound-wise feels exactly the same, yet it has an insane top speed. And then there is... can't remember which car it was. I think the Acura. The Acura has a turbo lag that is beyond mad. That car is... once you go flat out on the throttle after the turbo has spooled down, it takes a good second until it actually starts to accelerate. That's completely mind-blowing, but that shows me that they've not just, you know, taken one technology of the car and slapped it on all the other cars. They've built every car in a unique way, which makes balance of performance and behavior of hypercar type of driving, yes or no, a completely different story. Because the Peugeot understeers even worse than this car, but it is beautifully balanced and mega performant in low speed turns. However, the Alpine is the complete opposite. There's the car that works like a rocket ship in high speed corners, but don't you even dare try and take in a low speed corner, you spin immediately. And that means they need completely different setup philosophies when I've now been working on those sort of baseline setups. And that's also the thing why we have to work on them for so long. It's not just like, whatever rate works in this car, I can just put it on another car and be fine. No, that's not the case. I need to find an individual setting for every car to perform in an okay-ish level, so to say. What they've done for sure is they've designed one electric motor and slapped it on all the cars, because the Toyota and the Peugeot, they are LMH configuration, but I think they also carry an LMDH e-motor, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong though, I haven't pay too much attention about that. Anyway, tires are in the range now. Let's go push in the car. I think it's still understeery, but not as bad anymore. Let's see. I've put a pretty aggressive rear on. But you see how much the rear wing is covering it. So number one rule in PMR, it seems, when you want to throw the car into the corners, just add rear wing, you'll be fine. Yeah, I think they're trying to proper kind of unique ICE feeling, which, as you say, the transmission and stuff feels a bit special. So they're doing something to it. Don't you think? Maggots back at Chapsel was absolutely beautiful. I think I gained 2 or 3 tenths there, just from having high downforce glued rear end to the track. Let's give this one more shot. But the amount of top speed I'm losing and the amount of drag I'm creating with that massive rear wing, I'm not even surprised the car is kind of slow. Looking at this, it seems to me like it takes more than 3 laps instead of just 2 to fully heat up the tire. That was a bit too optimistic in terms of entry speed. It was just 2 tenths off. Let's see how we can carry that. Because I think the cornering speeds are insanely high. Getting better exits literally out of every turn. I don't know about tire pressures really. I think optimum tire pressure is something where you can get a medium tire into 100, 105 degrees temperature range while pushing it. Understeer. Yeah, but I mean, what do I want to do? Anything further on this now, and I'll just make the car go crazy. Go crazy esports quick, right? And this is not the intention of a baseline setup. But it's worth noting that indeed the Aston Martin is a car that seems to get slower instead of faster with the high downforce around this track. For many cars it was the other way around. Maybe I'm just not hitting the apexes correctly. What if that is actually the case? Because suddenly I'm like a 10th up. But I need to check what I have noted down on top speed at the end of Anger Straight. Because I think that was, let me have a look, 291. Look, we're losing a 10th from that last little king up into Cop's corner. And then here the understeering is off the rearwards aero balance strike, so the thoughts involved going into Max Backups and Chapel. But especially off throttle with a little bit of trail braking, the car rotates nicely, so we at least leave Maggots back at the Chapel being 4/10 down. That's 5/10, 5.5, 6. Now we're losing 7 kph, which I think is significant. But then Stowe, you see on the exit, you can rely on the car, and especially, interestingly, it's those low speed turns where the car seems to be superior now. Yeah, getting almost 3/10 back. Anyway, I consider that being a fine enough one for the high downforce area. And guys, that takes us to the end of the stream. A good 2 hours work has been put into the Aston Martin Valkyrie, and I think I'm pretty alright with those setup outcomes. And if you're interested in getting these setups in the end, I have to still work a little bit of them. I have to still work on a couple of cars, but once they are done, you'll find them in the main menu, in the downloadable content, in category vehicle setups, and then you'll find my logo down there, LMDH setups by me. They are still on version 1.6, hence I'm currently putting in the work for more. But there you can get the setups that I've just created right now for free. So yeah, that will be interesting for you guys. Right, I say thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you have appreciated the insight into this. We may do this another time with another card, but for the time being, we're gonna call it a day. I need a little bit of break. So you see, it's a bit of a process. Obviously, it's taken a bit of time to finish these off. As you could go this all day, but imagine how done you would be in the end of the day. So I hope you guys are fine with this so far. So we're now gonna have a race to Ponju, enjoy a little bit of iRacing, different type of content compared to PMR, but I guess you'll enjoy. And I say thank you, Captain Crunch, for joining. Leo, yes, I can speak German because I am German. But content is in English, as we've seen, as we've heard, and so on. So yeah, I say thank you to all the new subscribers on the channel. Much appreciating your support. You'll see this type of stuff maybe in a little bit more hidden way in Le Mans Ultimate at some point when we're working on the setups. But since those are esports setup for the team, I cannot show you the values, but you're gonna see the struggle at least. So you will be for sure enjoying that one. You need some tire data. Tire data for what? Alfonseca, hello there. Thanks for joining. Yeah, sadly, we're just ending the stream, guys. I say thank you so much for watching. Make sure to follow us on Twitch, subscribe us on the YouTube channel. Give this stream a thumbs up so it may come back. And till then, guys, I say thank you, happy Easter, and see you next time. Bye-bye.